Srimad Bhagavatam, Jai Gaur. Oh, bless the devotees, oh, bless the devotees, oh, bless the devotees, oh, bless the Shiva. So, reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 4, Text 22. Vidura approaches Maitreya. Ham Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Ham Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Ham Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yacha Narayano Devo Narascha Bhagavan Rishi Nityutibram Tapodigam Te Pate Lokabhavano Yatra Narayano Devo Narascha Bhagavan Rishi Midhu Tivram Tapodigam Tepete Lokabhavano Yatra Narayano Devo Narascha Bhagavan Rishi Midhu Tivram Tapodigam Tepete Lokabhavano Yatra, where Narayanaha, personality of Godhead, Devaha, by incarnation, Naraha, human being, Cha, also, Bhagavan, the Lord, Rishi, great sage, Midhu, amiable to everyone, Tivram, severe, Tapa, penance, Durgam, very long, Tepate, performing, Lokabhavano, welfare of all living entities. Translation, purport, divine grace, Translation, there in Badrikashram, the personality Godhead, in his incarnation as the sages Nara and Narayan, has been undergoing great penance since time immemorial for the welfare of all amiable living entities. Please repeat, there in Badrikashram, the personality of Godhead, in his incarnation as the sages Nara and Narayan, has been undergoing great penance since time immemorial for the welfare of all amiable living entities. Badrikashram in the Himalayas, the abode of the Narayan sages, is a great place of pilgrimage for the Hindus. Even up to the present, hundreds and thousands of pious Hindus go to pay respects to the incarnation of Godhead, Narayan. It appears that even 5,000 years ago, this holy place was being visited by such a holy being as Uddhava, and even at that time, the place was known to be very, very old. This particular pilgrimage site is very difficult to visit for ordinary men because of its difficult situation in the Himalayas, in a place which is covered by ice almost all year. A few months during the summer season, people can visit this place at great personal inconvenience. There are 4 dhams, or kingdoms of God, which represent the planets of the spiritual sky, which consists of the Brahmajyoti and the Vaikunthas. These are Badrikashram, Rameswara, Jagannath Puri, and Dwarka. Faithful Hindus still visit all these holy places for perfection of spiritual realization, following in the footsteps of devotees like Uddhava. So Badrikashram, of course, is in the north, in the Himalayas. Who's been to Badrinath? Badrikashram? Not many. Okay. It's actually the most popular pilgrimage place in India. Actually, over 1 million people go there every year now. Because Prabhupada says it's very difficult to get to, and it was previously you'd have to walk. It's very difficult, but now roads have been made and you can get a bus up. Myself and my wife, Rukmini in Kalindi, she was only 3 years old at the time. We went up there in 95, I think. And we got a bus from Rishikesh and just straight up into the mountains for about 12 hours. You get to Badrinath. Of course, what Prabhupada mentions here, Badrikashram, and of course Rameswara, which is South India, Jagannath Puri on the east coast, and Dwarka on the west coast. Sometimes that's called Char Dham, but also in the Himalayas you have the Char Dham, which is Badrinath, Kedarnath, Gangotri and Yamunotri. So, of course, Badrinath is where Vishnu is worshipped. Kedarnath is the place for Shiva, and Yamunotri, Gangotri, taking darshan of the Ganga and the Jamuna River. So I think to walk that Char Dham, I don't think it's that far apart, 40 or 50 kilometres. But to take a bus, basically you have to go up and then all the way back and get another bus, and it's like hundreds of kilometres by bus between each place. So, so it is a real like yagna to go to all four. But anyway, we went to Badrinath, and it was established, like Prabhupada mentions, 5,000 years ago. It was considered very old, but in more recent history, it was a big place for Buddhist worship. But Shankaracharya, he established a centre there about the 9th century, I believe. And so you can see if you've seen a picture of the Badrinath temple, it's got quite significant Buddhist architectural features there. You can see the influence there still. But the original temple the original temple is there, but it's been renovated and rebuilt many times. There's been earthquakes and avalanches and all sorts of things over the time. So, but it is a very popular place now to visit. There is, during, like Prabhupada mentions, during about 6 months it's closed during winter. Snow is like many, many metres deep. But because it's quite close to the Chinese border, it's like it's a sensitive place from a political sense. So even though nobody's allowed to go there, but there's soldiers who stay there. There's an encampment of soldiers. So the understanding, or that the practice is that when the temple gets closed for the winter, the priests, they fill up the boga kabadha, all the supplies, ghee and grains and etc., and they leave the ghee lamp burning. And then they close the door, and then so that's closed for 6 months. But when they come back, all the supplies, all the boga is disappeared, and the ghee lamps are still burning. So the understanding is that the devas, the demigods, come down, Narada Muni and others, they continue the worship. So apparently soldiers, they say, even though the temple's closed, from time to time they hear conch shells blowing in the temple. So a very mystical place. It's also it's a short walk, a few kilometres from there. You go to Vyasagufa, which is the cave of Vyasadeva. And that's apparently where Srila Vyasadeva spoke Srimad Bhagavatam. So you can visit there. And close by is the Ganesh Gufa, which is the cave where Ganesh. So the understanding is Srila Vyasadeva, he spoke Bhagavad Gita, and Ganesh actually wrote it down. So so it's a very and all the great saints that we hear about in our Vaishnav line, they've all went there, even Lord Ram. So it goes back a long way. Badrikashram. So in the actual temple itself, because we're hearing about Narayan here, so there's a deity of Narayan carved from black stone. And also on the altar is the deity of Vishnu deity, Bhadra Narayan, and also Kuvera, the treasure of the demigods. And also there's the deity of Narada and Uddhava as well. So we're hearing the last couple of chapters all about Uddhava. So he's present in that temple. And it's a quote from Skanda Purana 2.157 that the ashram of Lord Narayan, so this is referring to Badrinath, the ashram of Lord Narayan was called Mukti Prad in Satyayuga. Yoga Siddhi in Treta Yuga, Vishala in Dwapara, and Bhadragashram or Bhadranath in Kali Yuga. So if we're talking about in Satya Yuga, Mukti Prad, we're going back millions of years. So the Naranarayan Jiva Goswami mentions in the Laghu Bhagavatamrita that externally he appeared as the twin sons, or they appeared as the twin sons of a King Dharma and his wife. There's a whole story there about that. But they more or less appeared, and their main engagement is engaging in penance and austerity, meditation for the benefit of the world. So they're more or less seems eternally residing there in Bhadranath. And in Bhagavatam 4.159, which we'll get to next chapter, Maitreya explains to Vidura that Naranarayan Rishi is a partial expansion of Krishna, who has now appeared in the dynasty of Yadu and Kuru in the forms of Krishna and Arjuna, respectively, to mitigate the burden of the world. And in that purport, Prabhupada writes that Narayan is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Nara is the part of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan. Thus, the energy and the energetic together are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Maitreya informed Vidura that Nara, the portion of Narayan, has appeared in the family of the Kurus, and that Narayan, the plenary portion, plenary expansion of Krishna, had come as Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, with the purpose of delivering suffering humanity from the pangs of material burdens. In other words, Narayan Rishi are now present in the world in the forms of Krishna and Arjuna. So he's Naranarayan, they're quite esoteric personalities. You don't hear a lot about them, and sometimes the description of who they are and why they appeared, you sort of hear different understandings. But anyway, this is Prabhupada presenting that Krishna Arjuna, or Naranarayan, expanded as Krishna and Arjuna. And of course, when Krishna comes anytime, the basic purposes are the same, as mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, that to annihilate the miscreants and to deliver the pious. He appears millennium after millennium. So 5,000 years ago, Krishna Arjuna, as we know, appeared and basically annihilated the demoniac forces of the world to give pleasure to the devotees. So this whole pastime we're hearing, Sukadev Goswami speaking to Maharaj Parikshit, and they're relating this conversation between Krishna and Uddhava, and also in this chapter, Vidura and Maitreya. So sometimes it's easy to lose track of who's speaking and what's happening, but that's basically the background. So Uddhava was speaking to Krishna, and Maitreya, another sage, happened to be close by and was hearing the conversation. So he heard recently one of the previous verses that basically Krishna is speaking to Uddhava and very intimate topics. And Maitreya, just by providence, happened to be there. So Maitreya was hearing the same intimate topics of, deeper spiritual understanding. So when Vidura met Uddhava, Vidura wanted to know, what did Krishna speak to you? What was that topic about? He was very eager to hear. And we know that Bhagavad Gita in the seed verse 10:9, that the thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me, their lives are fully devoted to my service, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me. So this is the main activities of a devotee, that if we can control our mind, or we heard that higher taste to simply chant Krishna's name and speak about him, then we've achieved perfection. I heard a recent story about Kinchana Das Babaji, who was, in a sense, he was a contemporary of Srila Prabhupada, but he joined the Gaudiya Math, which was the institution established by Srila Prabhupada's Guru Maharaj, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. And so Kinchana Das Babaji, he just had a natural taste for chanting, and he would just sit in the ashram and chant constantly, all day and practically all night. And some of his godbrothers complained to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati that this boy, all he's doing is chanting, like that. They were complaining that why doesn't he do some service? And Krishnadas Babaji, hearing these complaints, he decided to go away because he didn't want his Guru Maharaj to be harassed by these other disciples complaining about him. So I think he was going to Rishikesh, or I think it was, in the Himalayas somewhere. And when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati heard that Kinchana, his disciple, had left due to this situation, he was very upset, and he set his disciples to go get him and bring him back. So eventually they were able to find him and bring him back. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati told Kinchana that you just sit here and chant. This is your service. Actually, before then, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said, okay, if you're complaining about him simply chanting and not doing service, I want you to do the same also. And so after a few days, the disciples said, oh, we just can't do it. We just can't sit and chant all day. So anyway, Kinchana Das Babaji was brought back, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati told him, you just sit here and chant all day. This is your service. You don't have to do anything else. So this is the perfection. I mean, for one who's not a devotee, it's difficult to understand. But for one who has that higher taste, and this is the platform we need to strive for, that we're simply satisfied of chanting Hare Krishna and hearing about Krishna. Simply satisfied doing that. But for many of us in this present state, our mind doesn't allow us to do it. We have to become active and do so much services. Otherwise, if we're simply sitting down chanting, the mind's going to get in the way. But this is the goal. This is the goal that we want to aspire for. So Vidura approached Uddhava. I want to hear about everything that Krishna spoke to you. And Uddhava wasn't eager to do that because there was a big age difference. Uddhava was around about the same age as Krishna. They were cousins. But Vidura was about the same age as Krishna's father, Vasudeva. And so he didn't feel that was proper etiquette. And actually, further on, one of the verses further on, Prabhupada mentions the offence of Maryada Vatikram, which means transgressing the etiquette of speaking in front of a superior. So Prabhupada mentioned the rule is that in presence of a higher personality, one should not be very eager to impart instructions, even if one is competent and well-versed. So, if you're, a younger devotee in the company of, your superiors, sannyasis, spiritual master, and somebody's asking a question, that young devotee shouldn't just jump up, yeah, I know what the answer is. Being a little bit proud or over-enthusiastic. That if you're in the company of your superiors, you should allow your superior to speak. So this is the mood of Uddhava, and he well understood this Maryada Vatikram, that you don't speak, because Maitreya was close by in the area, and so Uddhava told Vidura to go and speak to Maitreya. He said, Maitreya heard all these talks. You should go and speak to him. So, can you hold on to it till the end? Is that all right? Yeah? Okay. Thank you. So, so this is the understanding that's going on, the story that we're hearing, that Uddhava had that knowledge, and Vidura wanted to receive that from him, but he was sent to Vidura was sent to Maitreya. Because they were more on the same age, more contemporaries, and Uddhava didn't feel that it was proper to speak when he's senior in age. Even though Uddhava was more spiritually advanced, but still Maitreya was older. So to understand if we talk about who's senior, so 3 different categories you can look at. You can look at the age of the person, the time spent in devotional service, and their actual sort of position within the society. So all these 3 combined together, you understand who's the the senior person, like that. But even if one is more qualified, still we see Uddhava, out of his humility, he sent Vidura to speak to Maitreya, because Maitreya was he received that knowledge, but he was older, so therefore it was considered proper etiquette. There is one story we may have heard of Urvasi, one of the prominent what's the yeah, Apsara. Yeah, one of the society girls of the heavenly planets. So Urvasi is one prominent one. We hear her name come up quite often. So in conjunction with Naranarayan, we hear her appearance, that Naranarayan were engaged in severe austerities in Bhadrashram. And Lord Indra, the king of the heavenly planets, he gets a little bit insecure when this is going on. That why are they doing this? Maybe they want my position. We hear this quite often. And so Indra, he sent Kamadev. So Kamadev is in the Western world known as Cupid. Basically, Kamadev means lust personified, more or less. Kamadev and his wife Rati, and also spring personified, and many other very beautiful apsaras. And he told them, you go down and distract Naranarayan from their meditation. That was their mission. So other apsaras such as Menaka and Ramba and many of the other society girls. So they went down there in spring, he manifested, very beautiful environment. The whole idea was to attract their senses by establishing like more of a erotic mood, if you like. And so there was a lot of dancing and music, and Cupid was firing with his arrows and all sorts of things, just trying. And so, but Naranarayan were completely undisturbed, and not only that, from Naranarayan's body appeared a young girl who became known as Urvasi, and she was even more beautiful than all the apsaras there. And so all the apsaras, the dancing girls, so we just can't compete with this lady. She's just so beautiful, and her nature is superior to us. So all these personalities, out of shame and embarrassment, they went back to the heavens and told Indra, we just can't do it. So, but anyway, apparently Naranarayan, they spoke to Indra, said, look, we're not trying to take your position, but Urvasi is our daughter, but we want to put her under your care. So anyway, there's a whole story with Naranarayan. that they're sort of esoteric personalities. You don't hear, as I mentioned, you don't hear a lot about them, and it's a little bit difficult to understand exactly their position. But more or less, Prabhupada, he mentions that they've appeared for the benefit of the world through their meditation and their austerities, and so they're eternally residing at this Badrinath Badrigashram. So it's a little early, but I may end there if there's any questions or comments. I was going to ask anybody has stories about their visit to Badrinath, but nobody else has been there. So, yeah. Any questions, comments at all? I mean, in this purport, it's Prabhupada is more descriptive rather than philosophical. So we've sort of covered the main point. Yes, Rupa Raghunath.
Srila Prabhupada taught us that Sridham Mayapur, Sridham Vrindavan, Jagannath Puri are the most important places for the Vaishnavas. Mm-hmm. Are these other places just as important if we can get to visit the Lord in these places?
Yeah, well, that's what Bhagavatam mentions and Prabhupada mentions. It's interesting that those 4 dhams are all Vishnu dhams. They're specifically for Vaishnavas. You know, there are other dhams which are like more for Shivites and other personalities, but they're all 4 are for Vaishnavas. So it's very auspicious to visit those, but Prabhupada has established, particularly Mayapur and Vrindavan, for, whatever benefit you can get from them, you can get from all the other places also. So, but it is very auspicious to go on pilgrimage. Because I think I was reading Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. He says, in the beginning stages of spiritual life, to go on pilgrimage is very good. But in the higher stages, this is just seen as a disturbance. So it's interesting to see, understand that statement, that just sit in one place and chanting Hare Krishna is the perfection. But to get to that stage, to go on pilgrimage and get purified, that's also very nice as well. So in the Himalayas, like I mentioned, Badrinath is the main one for Vaishnavas. You've got Kedarnath for Shivites, and then, the taking darshan of the Gangun Jamuna. That's also nice as well. I think Bharat Prabhu he went to Kedarnath in his visit to India. So so it's very nice to do that. And the whole point is performing austerity for the pleasure of Krishna. If everything's too easy to achieve, it's sort of, it's just taken for granted that, but if there's some austerity to get there, that's why traditionally it's said that temples are built on top of hills, because there's some austerity to get there. If it's too easy, to achieve something, it's sort of, taken for granted. It all becomes a little bit cheap. So to perform some austerity, to take darshan of, Vishnu, Krishna, Holy Dham, then that's considered worthwhile, endeavour.
Another question.
Yeah.
Where is Rameshwara, and does that have a whole other name? And can you relate any significance in pastimes?
So Rameshwara, the presiding deity, does anybody know? Yes, true.
Rameshwaram is the presiding deity is actually Lord Shiva there, because Lord Ram worshipped Shiva before he went to Sri Lanka to kill Ravana, because Ravana was a disciple of was a devotee of Lord Shiva.
Yeah.
just wanted to mention that I've just come back from India, as you know. I did go to a place called Pandharpur, which is in Maharashtra.
Yeah.
It's connected to this Saint Tukaram. And Prabhupada mentions that he was part of the Sankirtan movement, and he started the chanting of Krishna's names in Maharashtra. So I heard a lot about this place, and I made that effort of going there. It was a little austere to get there, as you know, in India everything is austere. And managed to stay there for a few days, and I would highly recommend devotees who have not gone to other places apart from Mayapur and Vrindavan to consider these places because they have a very sincere, very rustic mood, mainly people from the rural areas. Because unlike Vrindavan and Mayapur, which has, I'd like to say, it's become a little touristy, And it's also inspiring for the local people to see Westerners coming there, and it helps them to appreciate the Dham. And when you say Dham, it's not restricted to Mayapur and Vrindavan. There's Pandharpur, there's Tirupati, there's Rameshwaram. I went to Srirangam, which is the presiding deity is Lord Ranganathan, who is none other than Vishnu. And my suggestion is, please read about Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's India tour, when he went to all these holy places. There's quite a few places which you can read about, and whenever you have the opportunity, please try and visit these places because you'll have a very wonderful experience. So, thank you.
Thank you. So,
this is just a question from before when you said about not answering if seeing a devotee for that.
Yeah.
I just had a question about that because that's sort of how you learn. So like sometimes the more advanced, I'm obviously really new, but from what I've observed, the more advanced the devotees get, actually the more humble they get, and the less inclined they are even to necessarily say this nectar that they know. And so like sometimes by saying what you think it is or asking what you think it is, maybe it could seem egoic, but it's actually like humbling to where how little you know. And like Arjuna even with Krishna is somewhat arguing with him, and that's how we learn all of what Krishna has to say. So how can you suggest a more in line with Vaishnava etiquette way to still learn, but if you don't speak and they may not speak, then...
No, the point is, inquiring and asking questions is encouraged, but if somebody is in an assembly of devotees and somebody is asking and the junior person speaks out over the seniors, that's what it's referring to. That there's some, it's like, say, if you're in a school and the teacher is out the front and a student is asking a question, another student jumps in before the teacher. The teacher is there as the authority. They should be given first option. Of course, the teacher may ask one of the other students, what do you think? Do you know the answer? But, the position of the teacher should be respected. So that's the point. And with Krishna and Arjuna, it's very early on in Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna accepts Krishna as his spiritual master. So there's a lot of discussion going on, but it's in a very respectful way, in the beginning, Arjuna says, I just can't do this, Krishna, and throws down his bow and arrow, and I just can't do it. And then he says, look, I just don't know what to do. I'm accepting you as my guru. Please instruct me. So at that point, the whole relationship changes. That they're no longer friends. but they're disciple and guru like that. So, so then all of Arjuna's questions, it's humble inquiry, So is that clear? Yeah. Okay. Good question. Thank you. Anything else? Okay. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.